Hey everyone, it's Curly, no hat, all hair, and we're gonna be playing with Scharhrot in set 15. So, this is going to be a little bit of, I guess, a follow-up from the tier list I did earlier this week. If you haven't seen that, make sure to check that out. It'll be on screen somewhere, or as usual in the description and the iCard and stuff. The reason I sort of grimaced and gave that face at the beginning of this is, as I discussed in that tier list, basically, Chronojet, or Gear Chronicle with Chronojet Z, is the best deck right now in our format, from what it seems. As many of you may or may not know, it is getting hit pretty soon, just because of how good it was, and even after then, it is still one of the best decks. And I'm using DI, which is another one of the best decks, nowhere to the point where it needs to get hit like Chronojet seemed to have hit, but it is a very, very good deck in my eyes. I might not be able to show that off because I kind of bricked here, and I do not have the optimal starting hand that I want to. So we're just gonna go through the motions and see how this goes. So Scharhrot has received 2 waves of support since we've last talked about it. We talked about it in the first wave, and the second wave I kind of skipped over in terms of doing a video for, because there wasn't really too much new that we got. We got a new Stride, which is really good, and we got a new Scharhrot, which was a little bit better than the previous one. But we didn't really have enough of the supporting pieces to make the deck as good as it could be. Whereas now, we finally got those good supporting pieces. A lot of them, actually. I mean, not a lot of them. The deck just fits better altogether now. We're gonna get, unfortunately, hit with a crit, which sucks. I didn't get to see it because I was talking. I forgot to add the ride. So we're supposed to be going into Scharhrot right now, but as you can see, I do not have him. So we will just have to go into this, which is our backup ride, regretfully. Let's go ahead and kind of last here to put cards that I wish I had in my hand into Soul here, get a little bit of power, as well as get the Messiah heal guard. We are, unless we check a heal here, we're actually going to just whiff a stand, because I really don't want to play anything else. So we're just going to get rocked next turn. But, so Scharhrot received a lot of things. It received the new grade 3, which has a pretty interesting ability. It's similar to the first Scharhrot that we have. So the first Scharhrot, they all of them have a requirement, soul requirement. Okay, he missed his ride as well, so at least that makes it a little bit even. I've never seen him play this grade 3, so who knows what that does. But they all have a skill, sorry, not a skill, soul requirement to activate this skill, and it's usually on Stride. The new Scharhrot that we're using here is a little bit different. But the first Scharhrot said at the end of the turn, if you're in darkness, if you soul charge that turn, depending on the number of cards in your soul, you do a combination of retire an opponent's rear guard, put 3 or more cards from your drop into, randomly, from drop, I think it was only 2 for that one, into your drop into the deck, or from deck into the, from drop into the deck. And then we got the second Scharhrot, which instead of doing it at the end of the turn, was actually on Stride, which was kind of interesting. So again, depending on the number of cards you had in your soul, but this one was locked to darkness specifically. And I didn't really like that because there wasn't really a lot of good darkness cards to play at that time. But depending on the number of cards that had darkness, or the darkness ability that were in your soul, you do a number of combination of things, which was retire an opponent's rear guard randomly from the back row. Sorry, I should go back. The first one is the same thing, you randomly retire from the back row. Then you choose 3 cards from your drop, put them into your deck, and then I think you like draw a card or something like that for the last effect. I can't believe we already got to use a PG, that is a bit unfortunate. Alright, we will have to make this work here. We have to go into this. This is a super scuffed play, to be honest with you, but hey, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. The new Scharhrot has two separate skills. He has an on-stride skill that lets you Soul Charge 2, and then after you Soul Charge 2, of course I draw him now. After you Soul Charge 2, you can choose a card from your soul, add it to your hand, and then choose a card from your hand, add it to your soul, which is a very useful skill. We're going to have to play this out regretfully. I might have to throw both of them out there. Do I have any in soul? I do have one in soul, so I guess we can throw these both out. It's possible one of them might get bot decked. We don't really need these Stride Fathers, so we'll play this out. We will not search. We will use the skill here of the Stride to flip Messiah, because we're not going against Joker. In order to Soul Charge, I think like 3 Scharhrots or something like that. No, okay, 2 Scharhrots and a War Tiger into drawing another Scharhrot. This is absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Let's try something here. Let's go ahead and use a Gastile. Put these 2 back. Put 2 cards back. Play out Gastile. Gastile copies the skill of those cards, and then lets me Soul Charge. But I'm not on Darkness, which is what I always forget about these Succubus. So that kind of sucks big time, because now these guys suck. Boy, things are not going in my favor whatsoever. Granted, that was a little bit more of a misplay than anything. But anyways, so the new Scharhrot has the skill that on stride you Soul Charge 2, put a card from soul into hand, put a card from hand into soul. Then he has another skill that says at the end of the turn, if you're in darkness, so if you Soul Charge during this turn, you can put a rear guard from field into soul, retire one of your opponent's rear guards, you choose, thankfully. Then you put randomly 3 cards from your drop into deck, and you countercharge. So it's way better than the other 2 because it lets you countercharge, it lets you choose where you retire. It's at the end of the turn, so if you check triggers, you're more likely to put them back, as opposed to the other Scharhrot, which if it's on first stride, you might not really have anything good in your drop, and you're probably putting possibly junk back, maybe. So it's a lot more useful in that way. Also, your deck is compressed for drive checks, and then you know, put cards back so that you don't deck out. He is gonna Chronos Command me. That is just gonna put this back. I wish he had the other Chronos Command so I could get these 2 guys back, but that's fine. Then we've got a new stride here, which is usually our first stride. If not, we go into this guy, the Sorrowful Slice, just because he has 1 more Soul Charge. The problem with this guy is that he doesn't have the Darkness, which a lot of your cards, well, not even a lot of your cards, one of your cards that lets you Soul Charge really well and is a good at rear guard, requires your Vanguard to be on Darkness. If you stride into this, you can't use the skill. Likewise, if you go into the Gillis, you can't use the skill of the Succubus that I tried to use just now. But the new GR we got here is usually our first stride here. That lets us Counterblast 1, G-Flip, retire, choose whichever, usually Intercept, opponent's rear guard, retire it, and then we get their power on our Vanguard, and then we Soul Charge 2 depending on how many cards are face up, which is pretty cool. We unfortunately lose the Succubus that I was talking about, but that's whatever. Then it also has a skill that, yeah, we can actually just go into it right now, actually, where if you're on Generation Break 3 and you have 13 or more cards in your soul, your opponent has to discard a grade 3. So it's very nice stride to go into. We are going to go ahead and Soul Charge here, and it makes your soul so much more useful because you can very easily just grab cards from your soul rather than constantly having to draw into cards and then decking out and having to play draws, for example. We don't have to do any of that stuff anymore, which is really nice. So let's go ahead and swing in here, pop this guy. This might be game here. We'll Soul Charge once. Yeah, that's enough. Is it 13 or more? Let's see. It is 13 or more, regretfully. Oh. So we're not going to be able to get the Guard Restrict, but I didn't want to Soul Charge any more than that. I was trying to look for how many PGs they've had. Okay, so if they have all 40 PGs in hand, they will, or if they have at least 2 heal guards, If not, we should be able to win here. We're gonna unfortunately have to play this out and hope that we can draw just Stride Fodder next turn. So we're gonna swing in here. This rearguard has the amazing skill where if you have 8 or more cards in Soul and you are in Darkness, he gets 10k power and your opponent cannot guard with grade zeros. So this is one of our main key game winning pieces here because your opponent just has to have PGs at that point. Because aside from the other stuff we had that had the guard restrict, now we have rear guards that also have the guard restrict. But we'll go into the rear guards more in depth in the deck list portion of the video, since that was just a very weird and scuffed match. So I like to start these videos with a match, just so you can get a taste of what the deck is like, and I like to talk through it a little bit then, but usually there's just stuff going on. I'm usually kind of scatterbrained through there, so I might just go into the more traditional format of going through the deck first and then going into a match. But anyways, this is my list. It's more or less just like the list that is being used, or that was used in the championships for Japan. I adjusted it a little bit. I played around with it a little bit myself. We can talk about the build that I had then, and then I saw, you know, the list from the top 16 and I adjusted it a little bit and liked how it played. The main difference between my list and their list is that we're playing this starter as opposed to the new starter that we got. This is the Deranged Singler that we got back when we got the second Scharhrot. Deranged Singler is amazing. He has a couple of skills. One, he can't be retired by opponent's card effects, unfortunately, as was made aware to me. With Numatama, it's not that this is an auto ability, this is a continuous ability as it should be, so I misspoke a little bit in my tier list video, but apparently it is that Dominate treats that unit as your own unit, so it is no longer being retired by your opponent's card effects, it's being retired by your own card effects. That's why it does get retired if your opponent were to dominate this and then have a skill to retire it or something like that. But putting that aside, on Darkness, so if you Soul Charge this turn, this guy gets 2k. So this isn't GB1 locked or anything like that, so if you Soul Charge turn 2, or even turn 1 somehow, this guy becomes a 7k booster, which is kind of nice. Then when you Stride, you can put this rearguard into Soul, and any other cards that are on board into Soul to draw 2 cards, which is very much needed because we do not play any draw triggers in this deck. We play pure stance. So this, in combination with the Weird Tiger, and it's constantly cycling out the Weird Tiger, is how we end up getting card advantage, plus the Scharhrot skill. But this, I think, is very important for the game plan. The other starter, I really don't like it at all, and I don't really understand why they play it. There might be some method to their madness, which is why I've seen so many lists playing the Waxdom Vampire. This also can't be retired by your opponent's card effects, and says on GB1 Darkness, put into the Soul, retire your own rearguard to add a grade 2 or 1 greater card with Darkness from your Soul into hand. So instead of just drawing 2 cards, you pull out 2 cards from your Soul. You lose cards in Soul, you don't plus in Soul as much as you do with the other card, potentially. So I don't like this guy as much, especially since he's not as useful first Stride, because I might not have as big of a Soul, or as, plentiful options in my Soul as I maybe would on like Stride 2, and by then, I'm probably all situated. So I like this just because it gives me the ability to play out cards turn 2 to Soul Charge and also go aggro on my opponent, possibly check some stands, push them to 3, 4, maybe 5 next turn, depending. And then being able to get those cards back. So that's why we play this. For the grade 1s, we are still playing the Succubus of Avarice. She has the skill where she's a PG, but if you are in Darkness and GB1 and she's in a Soul, you can retire a grade 1 or less. Has to be grade 1 or less, can't be, anything you throw down. To pull her out from Soul and put it into your hand. I don't necessarily use that skill too often. I don't usually have the ability to pull it off too often. I was eyeing this girl a little bit, but I don't like the counterblast cost for her. But basically, GB2, which isn't too hard to get on your first Stride, if you're in Darkness and this is in your drop, you can counterblast 1, bind any other card to add this back to your hand. I might consider this instead once I get the 4th copy. We'll try it out, because you can always just pull this out from Soul, your PG, with the Scharhrot skill, but usually I'm pulling out other stuff, so it is nice that I have the option to pull out something else and the PG. but usually I don't have a grade 1 that I want to give up, to be honest, because usually we are either using the Were Tiger for Stride or using it to put into Soul to draw cards, so you just don't have access to any of these because they're always in Soul. So this has many skills. This is unfortunately a 4 of because it's just very good in the deck, and it is one of the main cornerstones for the deck. As I think 3 abilities here. So when this goes into your Soul, other than by Ride, you counterblast 1, draw a card. So you can use this whenever you Soul Charge, whenever you use Scharhrot's skill to put a card from hand into Soul. We use a starter skill to put a card from field to Soul. However it gets to Soul, as long as you didn't just explicitly ride over it, you can counterblast 1, draw a card. Then on Darkness, if you have 6 or more cards, you can counterblast 1, discard a card from your hand to Soul Charge 1, and if you have 10 or more, you add this card to your hand. We never really ever use that skill unless there are situations where we just desperately need a booster to push for game or something like that. Or maybe if I don't have Stride Fighter for next turn, typically we don't need to use this anymore. Finally, the last skill is when this is in your hand and you're paying the cost for Stride. If you have at least 2 or more cards with Darkness in your Soul, this becomes a Stride Fodder, becomes grade +2, so it's very useful. We are still playing the original Stride Fighter, Succubus of Pure Love, because we desperately need to see Scharhrot, as we did in the previous match, where it's very awkward that I did not see Scharhrot. We need Scharhrot to get our plays going. And we only play 4 copies of Scharhrot. We don't play any of the other versions. We'll talk about that when we get to that. But this just lets you on place, discard a card, add Scharhrot from your deck, and if you're striding, it counts as grade +2. The last grade 1 we play here is the Edge in Darkness, which I used to have a lot more copies of, but then I had to lower it because of having to add in the Stride Fodder. Edge in Darkness says if you're in Darkness GB1, you have 6 or more cards in your Soul, this guy gets 3k. Then, if you have 10 or more cards in your Soul, it can intercept from the back row. So this is very, very good against certain matchups that you can just completely shut down for a turn and allow you to survive. We don't have as many of them, so we can't use it as often, but you can experiment with it as much as you want. I do think the Were Tiger is a 4 of, just because you need the draw power in this deck to actually stay in it, because you're playing so many cards, and you need some kind of cycle and plus from your Soul Charging. From the grade 2s, we play the new grade 2 here, the Succubus of Jealousy, my new favorite card here, that I often yell at because I forget that my Vanguard doesn't have Darkness, because she has the first skill that says on Vanguard or on Rearguard Circle, when placed, if your Vanguard has Darkness, look at the top 5 cards from the top of your deck, and you may put up to 2 grade 1 or greater cards with Darkness from among them into your Soul. So if you somehow put the starter back into your deck, you can't put it into your Soul, which is kind of funny. Then in general, if you're in Darkness, you get +2k. So there's a difference between your Vanguard having Darkness and you having Darkness, right? Darkness just means that you Soul Charge this turn, and your Vanguard having Darkness means that it has the keyword Darkness in it. So this is very good on turns 2 because it allows you to Soul Charge 2 cards. Very easily draw cards if you put it into Were Tiger. In general, it just lets you Soul Charge to thin out your deck, check triggers early. Also, it's a nice rearguard because it has, 11k, since it'll basically always be 11k unless you just don't manage to Soul Charge. Then the other cornerstone here is the Baneful Repressor, which we talked about on GB2. Which again, I honestly thought this was GB1 because I always first tried going to GB2. But on Darkness, when this unit attacks, if your Soul has 8 or more cards, it gets 10k, and your opponent cannot guard with grade 0 cards until the end of the battle. So that means basically your opponent just has to use PGs for these attacks, which is very, very threatening and makes this deck very potent. Because there are situations where, if your opponent does not have all 4 PGs in hand, they will lose. Because there are situations where you can swing in with 2 of these, swing in with a restanding Stride Vanguard, check stands to stand your Banefuls, and then swing in again, and then restand a Baneful if you hit another stand, while you're swinging in with your restanding Vanguard that has a crit on it. So this is very, very good for finishing out games. Sometimes I've even closed out games Stride 1, just because I was able to, even going second, even going first, right? And I'm the one that strode second. Even then, I've been able to close out games just between a combination of being able to Soul Charge early with the Succubus and then going into Baneful and being able to close out the game that way because my opponent just did not have the PGs necessary to, stay in the game. We're playing for the Demented Executioner here. This just says, on place, you look at top 7, put a card with Darkness into your Soul. It is mandatory. If you don't have a card with Darkness from the top 7, you don't put anything, but if you have at least one, you have to put one. Then if you have 6 or more cards in Darkness, Counterblast 1 to get 2k. If you have 10 or more, he gets 3k. That skill kind of comes up sometimes because again, we don't usually have grade 1s, so sometimes you have to Counterblast 1 just to give him enough power when you pop a rear so that he can swing in, or after a restand so he has enough power to swing in after the damage buff. And then we actually just play 1 copy of Gwyn the Ripper here. You can change this up as much as you'd like. On place, this just lets you Counterblast 1 retire a grade 2 or less rearguard. We typically don't play this outright. We used to play multiple copies of this before as like to close out. The only reason that we actually play this right now is because we have the Gastille, Evil God Bishop Gastille here. So he has 2 skills here, Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. At the start of the ride phase, if your soul has 8 or more cards, you may return a grade 3 rearguard with Darkness to your hand. We typically don't ever use that skill. What we use him for is the fact that he does have resist, which is kind of nice. So if Nupatama yanks this from your drop, they can't do anything with it, I think. Apparently I don't know the rulings for Nupatama, so I shouldn't say anything with 100% certainty. But in your hand, GB2, Darkness, for no cost, you can return 2 grade 2 specifically cards from your soul to the deck, and then this card gets all of their abilities until the end of the turn, and then you call this card out. So you can very easily, if you draw this out, you can play and put back a Gwyn the Reaper and Baneful Repressor to on place, Counterblast 2, retire an opponent's intercept, and then swing in, get plus 10k, and have the guard restrict. Or what I tried to do is like put back the Executioner and the Succubus to then on place, soul charge possibly 3, because both of their effects will activate. So that's why we're playing Gwyn the Reaper. I think most people play 2 of these. I only play 1 just because I really like these guys and I need them at max copies. So if there were kind of thing where I could like not have to play specifically 13 grade 2s, I would probably add in 1 more and drop a grade 3. The other grade 3 we play is from the first wave of support, the Glazened Vampire. This has 2 skills. The main skill that we use this for is because on place, Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you can Counterblast 1 like a top 5, put all cards with Darkness, as many as you want, into your soul, and he gets 1k for each card you put in. Then he can kind of work as a backup Vanguard if you really need to. You just don't see Scharhrot or the Stride Fodder Searcher. At the end of the turn, if you have 6 or more cards, put a Rearguard from either your hand or on field with Darkness into your soul. Draw a card. If you have 13 or more, countercharge, and then retire one of your opponent's rearguards. So kind of does some of the Scharhrot stuff. But the main key piece here is Scharhrot, who has a skill Darkness. So if you soul charge this turn, at the end of your turn, put a card, put a grade 1 or greater rearguard into your soul. I hate that it's grade 1 or greater, because sometimes if I go first against Nupatama, I want to put my starter into the soul so that they can't use it to dominate or whatever. But anyways, keep in mind you can't just put like a heal guard and put it into your soul. Retire one of your opponent's rearguards. If you have 8 or more cards in your soul, return 3 cards at random from your drop and countercharge 1. So I think the first Scharhrot had to be like 10 or more cards in soul. You just now have to have 8 to be able to put cards back into your soul, which is amazing. The second Scharhrot has a skill that has to be all cards in Darkness. This does not care. This is just bare numbers. You can use this before you stride, which is what makes this card very good, because you can very easily put down your Succubuses, your Executioners, swing in, put in a lot of pressure on your opponent, check some stands after soul charging selectively cards, and then thin out your deck. Then you can go aggressive on your grade 3 turn, retire one of your opponent's rearguards. So if an Overlord plays out one of their like stride cards, or Nupatama plays out that card that gets power, whatever, you can then retire it and then possibly put those stands back into your deck. So you're rewarded for being very aggressive, and you also countercharge. Of course, you have to hit 8 or more cards in soul, and you have to be in Darkness, which means you have to soul charge the turn that you have Scharhrot. Keep that in mind. But it is a play that I've been able to do very well, and I'm going to win games even though I went first. So this deck is actually pretty decent going first, to be honest. Then it has a very basic skill that we mentioned, where if you stride, you soul charge, and you add a card from Darkness, so it has to be specifically Darkness from your soul into your hand, and you put any card from your hand into soul. Typically what you do, sometimes you pull out a Were Tiger, put it back into soul to draw 1. If you already have it in hand, put it into soul, draw 1. If you soul charge the counterblast, draw 1. If it's on a kill turn, you pull out your Repressor to then use that. Otherwise, you usually just pull out an Intercept. Usually I don't have intercepts because I play them out early, but if you don't do that, you can grab like a PG or something like that. You can also keep in mind that whatever you pull out, you can end up putting back at the end of your turn with the first skill. And that's basically it for the deck. We're playing 4 Hero Guards. We're playing 9 stand just because of the fact that we can recycle our triggers and the fact that we can draw so much. We really don't need to play any draws. Crits aren't really as useful, especially because we have such many good rear guards, especially ones that have guard restrict. That's why we want to play stands. I was originally playing a version that was using, whoops, clicked on the wrong thing, that was using the old Scharhrot, or the second Scharhrot here, because he has a rearguard skill that is exactly the same as Repressor, except it's 10 more cards in Soul. Then your opponent cannot guard with grade 0s. He only gets 5k, but he was a nice backup in case I didn't have Repressor, but I usually always have a way to get Repressor, so he's not as necessary, but you can play him instead of some of these cards, either this or this, just as a backup, and then he can work on as a rear guard. He just doesn't soul charge, which kind of sucks. And then I was also playing the lovely Chariot. I was playing like 3 copies of Chariot. I think it was like 3 copies of Chariot, 4, and then I started out with like 2, but then I narrowed it down to just 1 of the second Scharhrot. You can try that out, and I had some pretty good success with that build, excuse me. But you just end up putting so much junk into your deck. The reason why that's a problem is because of your main stride, which is here, the Belader Mouse. I'm sure I'm probably saying Belader Mouse. Yeah, I might be saying that wrong, but I've seen a bunch of the lists that play 4 of this, and I thought that seems unnecessary. I usually always end the game going into this, but at playing the deck a little bit more, I can totally see myself needing to play 4 of these. So what this does is GP2 on Darkness. Once per turn, when its unit attacks, if your soul has 10 or more cards in soul, counterblast 1, G-flip, put 2 cards from your hand into soul, and return all rear guards from your soul or on field with triggers to the deck. Then 2 units get 5k, and then this gets the seal that at the end of the battle that it attacked, you can restand it, draw 1, it gets a crit, drive -2. So this is your finisher here. You want to go into this, use and pull out your Repressors, possibly use Gastille to copy Repressor, and this to get rid of any intercepts. If not, you can just swing in, maybe use a Demented Executioner or your Succubus of Jealousy to just close out the game. But you just want to put in as many triggers at that point back and in your deck, compressed, or in your soul and in hand. Heals as well, put them into the deck, check them, check stands, restand Repressors, swing at your opponent. If they don't have 4 PGs, they will more than likely die. There are some decks that can very easily shut you down, those being Gurgwait and War Paladin, which are really annoying matchups because they can randomly gain intercept during your turn, during the battle phase. The game state can change and they will have an intercept, which will screw up your attack pattern, so keep that in mind. Other than that, the G-Zone is kind of whatever. The only other stride worth of note is this guy, which we just go into if we don't have enough soul. First stride, and if we, for me, because I'm poor and I don't have another playset of the Balm, if you want to, let's say you're going up against like Gear Chronicle or something that has annoying intercepts that you can retire, you can wait for this. If they haven't put out that intercept, if Gear Chronicle hasn't put out the back row intercept or something like that, you can wait until they do that and then go into this to retire it and make sure you can get in your attack. This does give you 4 drives and an attack. We'll go over this actually. So it just says Counterblast, G Persona Blast, retire one of your opponent's rear guards, and it gets that unit's attack. Then you may soul charge for each card in your face up in your G-Zone. You soul charge 2. Then it also has the skill that when this unit attacks, you draw a card and this gets drive +1. So if you're low in hand, you can also use this. Then it has a skill if opponent, if your soul is 13 or more, your opponent has this. If they were to Sentinel, they have to discard a grade 3. I think grade 3 or greater. This does not have that guard restrict. It just lets you soul charge 1, flip 1, soul charge 1. Or sorry, flip in your G-Zone, soul charge 3 cards. Then you choose one of your rear guards for each different grade you soul charge. I thought you just automatically choose like 2 or 3, but it's depending on what you soul charge. They get 5k, and then you choose a card that's grade 3 from your soul if you soul charge the card with Darkness, which you 90% of the time will, and add it to your hand. So he's pretty decent. has some pretty good effects. He isn't as aggressive, so if you know you're not going to win on that turn, you can go into this setup for next turn. Then the rest of the deck is kind of just the old GRs that we had. I honestly never go into this. I only go into Giles if, for whatever reason, the game didn't end based on this, or if they're on like 4 damage and I don't have a lot of triggers, we'll try and go into this, which just says you G-flip, get a crit, and if you have 10 or more, he gets 10k, 13 or more, he has the guard restrict. Scharhrot says when it attacks, counterblast, flip, put all rear guards into soul, he gets 10k, and if you have 10 or more, retire opponent's rear guards, and if you have 13 or more, he has a guard restrict. So this is good if you have like a board of resist set up on the other side, you can use this. But yeah, we typically do not go for this at all. I have 2 of these just because if I play against Link Joker with this guy, I typically always flip up the Harmonix Messiah, but instead I'll flip up Scharhrot. And that's about it. That's the deck. As I said, if you just want to soul charge, go with Scharhrot, swing in, hit him a guard restrict, and profit. Hey, so I actually tried to do one of these games yesterday, which is why I'm wearing a different shirt now, and the game 2 didn't turn out as good as I really wanted to. I don't know if I really want to rush them right now, because it was against a Nubatama, but they were kind of, I possibly should have rushed them. They were kind of using like sort of like a budget build because they had a bunch of random commons and stuff like that. So I kind of blew them out of the water just because they didn't really have any of this stuff, and so I figured as I was editing it, while I finished recording it, I was like, you know what, that seems good enough. This video is pretty long, we'll leave it at that. But as I was editing, I was like, alright, let's give this another fair shot. So here we are against what I think is an actual Nubatama player. We did get lucky and we're going second here. We do have a pretty decent grade 2 turn that we can do here. And let's see if we can actually pull it off. So let's go ahead and play down this. We're going to put in one of these into soul. Fortunately, we do not have... we're unfortunately going to have to get rid of this, I guess. I could have put back... or dropped the PG, I guess, but we need to get Scharhrot as well as a Strike Fighter, so we're keeping the War Tiger. This guy is pretty essential, so we're keeping that as well. If we can hit a stand, that'd be great. We don't, unfortunately. But that's sort of what I was talking about. This is sort of the turn 2 play that you always want to do. Go into the Succubus on Vanguard, play the Executioner on the side, maybe play a booster if you think you're going to hit a stand. Then you can go ahead and swing with Executioner, swing with Succubus, hit stand, stand, and push your opponent to 4. Then when you go on your turn, you can then go into the Golem, retire whatever intercepts they have, and then try to push for game with stuff like the Repressor, which is great. One of the things that really sucks with Nubatama is that they tend to do 2 things that end up not letting me use my starter, which really sucks. The first thing is what he just did now, where he binds the starter. I need to have it on board, and I can't believe he just double healed, so all my aggression just went out the window. But then if they go and stride first, they can go ahead and attack into it and just kill it off that way. And both of those things extraordinarily suck because I can't get any value. Want to put in some damage here. But this might have to stretch into a 3rd stride. So I think we go into this, because I really don't think, with him being at 1, I'm going to be able to kill him off next turn. Unless I high roll. So we're going to play it safe, go for a 3 stride game here. Let's go ahead and soul charge. That's fine. We have just a 1 intercept. So I guess we'll pull out the Succubus, knowing full well that she's not going to soul charge. We can put this into soul because it's basically useless right now, unfortunately. Let's put the Succubus here because she kind of needs the booster. Put our buddy here and go ahead and use our skill to soul charge. We'll flip up the Messiah because we don't really need it in this match. We're going to soul charge a bunch of grade 3s, which is a bit unfortunate. We'll grab the guest steal as usual. We don't really have a lot of soul, so we won't put anything back. We think we have just enough soul where we can actually use this skill here of the repressor, but let's swing in here, see if we can get at least a stand to push him to 4, but no. Yeah, this is going to be a slow, grindy game, regretfully, as we're just going to hit double defensive after the double heal, which really is pretty painful. Let's go ahead and put in this, and put in, you know, pretty decent cards. And move on with that. So the game plan now is going to be to try and survive. We're going to get pushed to 5. And unfortunately, due to losing the starter, we're going to be in a pretty bad spot. Because I would have had 2 extra cards in hand, which could have made the difference in this game. But yeah, that's just one of the big downsides. Against going against Nubatama, it's not really a horrible matchup. But it's definitely not an easy matchup for DI. The multiple intercepts do help because they have to, you know, work a little bit harder to just clear your board and get in every free attack. But because right now he can dominate this, attack into this, and then retire this, whereas before he would have dominated this, attacked into this, and then dominated this, attacked into Vanguard, right? So that gives us a little bit of a buffer here, unless they, I think, yeah, if I can hit a defensive, this does not hit unless they manage to power it up. Yeah, and we might get away with not getting pushed super hard here, but we do kind of need, there we go, some sort of temple swings. It is pretty unfortunate that we don't play draws, because in situations like this, there's not really much that I can do, right? Thankfully, we did check the defensive, so we're not going to take, you know, too many more attacks after that, which is good. So again, that's the good thing about playing the multiple intercept, is that it takes away one of their attacks. That would have been really bad otherwise. Alright, that's actually pretty good. We can go into this to draw some more cards. Let's discard to get steal. We are gonna have to give up the possibility of having Stride Fodder for next turn, which is really gonna suck. But let's go ahead and Soul Charge here. Hopefully hit another Were Tiger. No, not. I don't know what I expected. A couple of options here. I guess let's grab Demented Executioner. We're gonna put in the Were Tiger into Soul. We're gonna hopefully hit something that we can play and put into Soul at the end of the turn, which is going to be that. That is actually fine, actually. We could use that if we really wanted to. We're going to hit not the best targets here. And let's go ahead and use the skill. And swing. And pop that. And we will do 1 Soul Charge here. We will not do the second. I will play this here, but I will not use the skill, and I think we'll leave it at that. We do have a, we could have used the skill here to make this bigger, but I don't think after these 2 swings it was really going to be able to hit. Even so, I would rather put in all of my effort into the repressor here. Gonna hit a stand, which is really good. Or sorry, we're gonna hit a heal. 2 heals, alright, so that definitely goes ahead and stabilizes us here, as well as the stand, which lets us swing in here, thankfully. Had we hit another stand, you know, we might have been able to push in a little bit better. We're gonna get their pop, their first PG there, which is good. We're gonna be at 3, which is amazing. Nubatama is obviously very dangerous when you're at 5, but fine not. It's not too bad. And we did get the high roll there and putting back heals and stands, which is amazing. Unfortunately, this thing has the most disgusting ability in the world, where it calls out cards from your opponent's hand. It makes you attack with them, which is insane to me. So, depending on how they do this, I might not get this back. But thankfully, we only had 1 card that was not a heal or PG, but that also kind of lets them know what I have in hand. This card is extremely strong. Then after that, they can dominate after they stride. Let's see what they're gonna go into. They're gonna go into this guy, which has the, I think he has a crit and guard restrict, or no, he binds a card is what he does, yeah. Which is pretty obnoxious. So it shouldn't matter. Let's see what they actually bind. They bind that, which is decent, and they're gonna bind that, which is also decent. As long as I can get those cards back, that is perfectly fine, because we should be able to survive, judging from the number of attacks that they've got going on here. Worst case scenario, they'll bind one of my, you know, guards, but that shouldn't matter. Yeah, it's totally fine. We have enough to guard this attack, and then this just pushes us to 5. And ooh, that kind of sucks. I was gonna say, as long as they don't heal, then we can go into this young man here and close out the game. But that is not going to be the case. We will hopefully get all of our cards back and not have to discard, because they do have some skills that force you to discard, but we don't get that this time, which is good. Considering the low amount of cards we have in our soul, we're gonna have to go into this regardless of the fact. Like I said, I've seen a lot of people play a full playset of this. I don't know how they use the effect the second time, because you just don't have anything in soul at that point, but well. Yep, we gotta grab one of these for our end game here. Do I want to put anything in? I do not believe I do. Let's go ahead and put this here. Put this here. Take a look at how many triggers we have in soul. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to have to use Gastille here to put back some of these cards. We do have a lot of counterblasts, which is really good. Let's use this because we don't have to choose when we play her. So now we can play the Gastille back here. Use the first skill here to counterblast 2, retire one of these. And then this lets us put something into soul, but we're gonna not do that. We're also gonna play the Were-Tiger here, and then we're gonna go to battle, right? We're going to swing in here, and I think we want to swing in here. Hope for no defensive. Okay, so we should have game here because they only have 1 PG left. Swing in here, use the skill. Put all our cards in hand, because we only have 2, and as well a bunch of cards from soul. Power up 2 units, and basically just hit every single stand that we've got in deck. Power this up so it swings in, breaks through a PG. It doesn't really matter who I power up at this point, because these guys both hit. Again, it doesn't matter, because they get the 10k, so they hit anyways, and they require the intercept. The PG automatically. How many heals do they have left? They have nothing left. So we can just swing in here for game, because they would have to have heal guards in order to block this. Or no, PG, sorry, to block the attack, in which case they don't have any. So there we go. That was a much better showing than I had recorded before. We got to see basically the kill turn in action, where you play the 2 repressors, go in. Turn 2 game, I think that all of that was perfect. So I hope this helps. I might have oversold the eye. I could have swore I saw more of it in the top 16, but I still think I'm stand by my guns. Say DI is tier 1. I think it is extremely good, and it handles all the tier 1 matchups extremely well, as well as everything lower than it, but it is probably on the lower end of tier 1, because some of the decks are probably way stronger than it, but again, I still think the deck can compete with it. But in any case, till next time, take care of yourself, play Vanguard, and have yourself a damn good one.